Welcome to our deep dive today. We're going to be going through Shonda B. White's book, Don't Be a Wife to a Boyfriend, and really kind of digging into all the juicy stuff about self-discovery and finding real love.
And I think what's going to be particularly interesting for you on this deep dive is how much White's own journey really mirrors a lot of what you've been going through,
Mm.
especially her struggles with self-esteem stemming from her absent father.
Yeah. It's crazy how much she just lays it all out there.
Yeah.
She talks about those awkward encounters with her dad, like running into him at a store on a church trip,
Oh, yeah.
at a concert, even at her prom.
Uh-huh.
It's almost funny in a way, but also kind of heartbreaking because you can feel that longing for connection.
Absolutely. And, those anecdotes aren't just for entertainment. They really drive home this point about how much those early experiences, especially with parental figures, can impact our self-worth.
It's like we develop these invisible chains, as she calls them,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of hold us back in relationships.
Exactly. And it's often subconscious. White talks about how she sought validation through relationships, even turning to early sexual experiences,
Wow.
because she was craving that love and approval that she missed out on. And it led to some unhealthy patterns.
That's where it gets really interesting to me. It's like this isn't just a personal story anymore. It's something much bigger.
Absolutely. This cycle of seeking external validation that White describes, it's a classic sign of what psychologists call insecure attachment.
Okay.
When we don't get that consistent love and security in childhood, we tend to seek it desperately from romantic partners. It's like we're trying to fill an emotional void that can only be filled from
Oh
within.
my gosh. That's making me rethink so many past relationships. I can totally see those patterns in my own life now.
And that's the power of White's book. It encourages that self-reflection.
Yeah.
And that's the first step towards breaking those chains. Recognizing the patterns is key.
Okay. But how do we actually break free? It feels kind of overwhelming to think about, untangling years of emotional baggage.
Well, it's a process for sure. And it's not always easy. But White offers some really practical advice. She talks about this aha moment she had where she learned to let it flow in relationships.
Okay.
And it's a complete shift from her old pattern of rushing into defining everything. Remember that hilarious story about her pressuring a guy to DTR after just a few weeks of dating?
Oh my gosh. Yes, I was cringing reading that, but also laughing because I've so been there, you
Mm.
know, trying to force a label on something way too soon. What's the psychology behind that kind of behavior, though?
Well, it often ties back to that insecure attachment we were talking about, the need to have that security, that label to feel safe in the relationship.
Right.
But the irony is that kind of pressure often backfires.
Makes total sense. So letting it flow is basically the opposite of that. It's about being present, enjoying the connection, and not getting hung up on where it's going.
Exactly. It requires patient self-awareness and a willingness to be vulnerable without needing constant reassurance or a defined outcome.
I think a lot of people, myself included, could really benefit from embracing that gray area she talks about. What exactly does she mean by that?
The gray area is that early stage of dating where things aren't clearly defined. You're not officially boyfriend and girlfriend,
Mhm.
but you're more than just casual acquaintances.
Yeah.
And it's in this uncertainty that a lot of anxiety and assumptions can arise.
Oh, absolutely. Like, how many times have we overanalyzed a text or a missed call because we weren't sure where we stood?
Right. That's why White stresses open communication. Talking to your partner about your expectations, your feelings, and what you're comfortable with.
And being honest with yourself about what you want, not what society dictates or what your friends are doing.
Exactly. It's about taking ownership of your own needs and desires.
This is all so helpful. It's like we're already breaking those chains just by talking about them.
That's the first step. And
Mhm.
White provides so much more guidance throughout the book. Practical steps you can take to build healthier relationships.
Well, I'm definitely hooked. I can't wait to dive into more of her insights.
One of the big things that can really trip us up in relationships is that urge to try and fix our partners.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Yeah.
It's like we think we can mold them into our ideal person. Like that whole saying about you can't change a man,
Right.
but we keep trying anyway.
Exactly. And White uses this really great analogy about the potter and the clay. We may think we can shape people into what we want, but real lasting change has to come from within.
And she learned this lesson the hard way, too. She shares this story about a long-term relationship where the guy just kept cheating on her over and over, despite promising to change. It's got to be tough to realize you just can't make someone be faithful.
Yeah, that's a tough one. But it highlights a really important point. We can't force someone to be faithful or respectful or anything else for that matter.
So what do we do then? Just give up on anyone who has flaws?
It's not about giving up on people.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing your own worth and refusing to settle for less than you deserve.
Right. It goes back to those boundaries we were talking about earlier.
Exactly. It's about saying, this is what I expect in a relationship, and I'm not going to compromise on my values.
Instead of trying to change someone, we need to focus on choosing partners who are already aligned with what we want.
Absolutely. And, speaking of values, White's own journey took a really interesting turn when she and Eric, her now husband, decided to embrace celibacy before marriage.
That's the part that really stood out to me. It's not exactly the typical love story you hear about. Was
Right.
it a religious thing for them?
It was rooted in their faith.
Yeah.
Yes. But what's interesting is how White connects this experience to the bigger picture of physical intimacy. She talks about how easy it is for love and lust to get all mixed up and lead to confusion and hurt feelings.
Oh, yeah. Especially when you're first dating and everything is so new and exciting, it's easy to mistake that physical chemistry for deep love.
Exactly. And celibacy for them was about untangling those two things so
Mhm.
they could be sure their bond was built on something deeper and more lasting.
And it obviously worked out for them, but she doesn't present it as the only way to find love, right?
Right? White is very clear that it was the personal choice for them,
Yeah.
and it might not be right for everyone. But what I find valuable is how she encourages us to be intentional about physical intimacy, no matter what our beliefs are. It's about making sure our actions match our values.
So it's not about judging other people's choices. It's about being honest with ourselves about what feels right for us.
Exactly. And for White, that process of self-discovery and aligning her actions with her values ultimately led her to Eric, who she calls the one.
And she actually outlines 8 signs based on her experience that can help you figure out if someone might be the one for you. Okay, I need to know what these signs are.
Well, these aren't like a magical checklist or anything. It's more about recognizing those core qualities that point to a healthy and sustainable relationship.
Give me some examples.
One of the key signs is that their actions align with their words. It's about consistency and knowing you can rely on them. You don't have to second guess their intentions or try to decode mixed signals.
No more playing games.
Right. It's about feeling secure, knowing your partner is there for you, both emotionally and practically. They show up, they're engaged. You don't have to beg for their attention or commitment.
It all goes back to what we were saying before about breaking those chains of insecurity and needing external validation. When you're with the right person, you just feel it right.
Exactly. There's a sense of ease of being accepted for who you are, flaws and all. And that leads to another sign. White highlights feeling genuine love and respect. It's not about fleeting compliments or big showy gestures. It's about those small everyday acts of kindness, consideration, understanding.
It's like feeling seen and heard and valued for who you really are without having to pretend.
You got it. And that feeling of being valued goes beyond just the romantic stuff. White talks about how important it is to have a partner who supports your personal growth and encourages you to chase your dreams.
Which reminds me of that story she tells about almost dropping out of college for a boyfriend's business venture. Talk about a close call.
Yeah, that could have been a disaster.
Yeah.
But it shows how easy it is to get caught up in the excitement of a relationship and put our own aspirations on the back burner.
It's like those chains were trying to hold her back from reaching her full potential.
Exactly. And this ties into a bigger theme that runs through the whole book, breaking free from those societal pressures, especially for women, around finding a partner and settling down by a certain age. White talks about how anxious she was about turning 30 and feeling like she was falling behind.
Oh, I feel that. It's like there's this pressure cooker, especially for women. Like if you haven't found the one by a certain age, you're somehow failing at life.
Right, and that's exactly the narrative White challenges. She talks about how she found peace and contentment by shifting her focus from what she lacked to what she already had.
It's about gratitude, but also recognizing that your worth doesn't depend on your relationship status.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's about reframing how we think about being single. It's not some waiting room for life to begin. It's a time for growth, self-discovery, and going after those dreams that might have been put on hold.
I love how she flips the script on what society tells us about being single. It's not a curse, it's an opportunity.
Exactly. And by embracing that opportunity, investing in ourselves, and breaking free from those limiting beliefs, we actually become more attractive to the right kind of partners.
Because we're coming from a place of wholeness, not neediness.
Exactly. That confidence and self-worth is magnetic.
This is making me rethink everything I thought I knew about finding love. It's not about desperately searching or trying to fit into some mold. It's about becoming the best version of ourselves and trusting that the right person will be drawn to that.
You're getting it. And we've only just scratched the surface of what White covers in her book. There's so much more to explore, from navigating heartbreak and forgiveness to understanding the role of faith and spirituality in relationships.
Okay, well, consider me officially intrigued. I need to hear more about how White navigates those tougher parts of love and relationships. All right, let's talk about some of those tougher relationship topics, like heartbreak. It's something we all go through at some point. But White seems to have this amazing ability to turn those painful experiences into wisdom.
Well, heartbreak is kind of unavoidable, isn't it? It's a part of life, part of love. And White's book doesn't try to sugarcoat that. She really dives into those raw, messy emotions that come with it.
She's been there, and I
Yeah.
think that's what makes her advice so relatable.
Right. She talks about how she used to struggle with letting go, holding on to past relationships way too long.
Yeah.
And that's where those chains we keep talking about really start to tighten their grip.
It's like they bind us to the past and keep us from moving on.
Exactly. And so her first piece of advice when it comes to heartbreak is really simple but powerful. Allow yourself to grieve.
Don't try to bury those feelings or pretend you're not hurting.
Let it all out. Cry, scream, write in a journal. Talk to a therapist. Whatever you need to do to process those emotions. Because if you don't, they'll just fester and come out in other unhealthy ways.
It's about giving yourself permission to feel the pain, but not letting it consume you.
Exactly. And once you've let yourself grieve, she says it's time to shift your focus to the present moment.
So instead of dwelling on what went wrong or who's to blame, it's about focusing on what you can do right now to feel good.
Right. Surround yourself with people who love and support you. Do things that bring you joy. Take care of your physical and mental health. Fill your life with positivity and reclaim that sense of self.
Remind yourself that you're worthy and valuable even without that relationship.
Exactly. And that leads to another crucial step in healing: forgiveness.
Forgiving the person who hurt you, but also forgiving yourself.
Because holding on to anger and resentment just keeps you stuck in the past.
White uses this great analogy about letting go. She compares it to driving a car.
Oh, yeah.
She says you can't keep looking in the rearview mirror if you want to get to your destination.
Love that. It's so true. Forgiveness lets us release those negative emotions and make space for something new and beautiful to come into our lives.
So it's not about saying what happened was okay. It's about freeing yourself from the burden of that pain.
Exactly. It's a gift you give to yourself.
Okay, so we've talked about heartbreak and forgiveness. Now, something that White doesn't specifically address in the book, but I think is really relevant to this conversation, is the role of faith in finding love.
Yeah, it's interesting because while White's own faith is clearly a big part of her life, and it definitely influenced choices like celibacy, she doesn't present it as the only way or try to preach.
Right. It's more like she's showing us how her faith gave her strength and guidance throughout her own journey.
And I think that's what makes it so powerful. It's not about pushing any specific religion or set of beliefs. It's more about how spirituality, in whatever form it takes for you, can help you navigate the ups and downs of love and relationships.
It's like having that inner compass to guide you.
Exactly. It's about connecting to something bigger than yourself, whether it's a higher power or a sense of purpose or even just a strong set of values.
And for a lot of people, faith can provide that sense of hope and resilience, especially when going through tough times like heartbreak.
Absolutely. It's about having faith that you're on the right path, that you deserve love, and that things will work out in the end.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. White talks a lot about learning to recognize the difference between love and lust, which can be tricky, especially in the early stages of a relationship.
Oh, yeah. Those butterflies, the intense attraction, can be so intoxicating. But it's not always love.
And she admits she used to mix those two things up all the time, thinking that passion meant it was meant to be.
It's a common mistake. We think if the sex is amazing, it must be true love.
Right.
But as White discovered, real love is about so much more than just physical chemistry.
It's about respect, shared values, trust, emotional intimacy, a connection that goes deeper than the surface.
Exactly. It's about feeling safe, seen, and understood for who you truly are. And it's about loving someone for their flaws as much as their strengths.
So how can you tell if it's really love or just a fleeting infatuation?
White suggests asking yourself some tough questions. Do you respect this person? Do you trust them? Do you share their values? Do you feel safe and secure with them? Can you see a future with them? And maybe most importantly, do you love them, even when you're not feeling physically attracted to them?
Those are some great questions, because physical attraction can fade over time. What's left when the sparks die down?
That's the real test of love.
Yeah.
Having that deep connection that goes beyond just the physical, choosing to love someone every single day, even when it's not easy or exciting.
Okay, so we've talked about heartbreak, faith, love versus lust. What other tricky relationship topics does White cover?
One of the most powerful things she talks about is recognizing and breaking free from those chains that hold us back in relationships. Those patterns that stem from childhood experiences, societal pressures, past heartbreaks.
Yeah, those invisible burdens that weigh us down.
Exactly. And White's message is clear. We have the power to break free from those chains. It starts with becoming aware of them, recognizing the patterns in our relationships, and understanding where they came from.
It's like shining a light on those hidden beliefs that are sabotaging our happiness.
And once you've identified those chains, it's about consciously choosing to let them go. This might mean therapy journaling, surrounding yourself with supportive people, or simply making a firm decision to change your thinking and behavior.
It's like rewiring your brain, breaking those old negative patterns and replacing them with beliefs that empower you to love and be loved in a healthier way.
Exactly. And it's not always easy. But White's story shows us that it's worth the effort. The freedom that comes from breaking those chains is incredible. It lets you step into your worthiness, set healthy boundaries, and attract the kind of love you deserve.
This deep dive has been so insightful. Shonda B. White's Don't Be a Wife to a Boyfriend is full of wisdom about self-discovery, love, and building healthy relationships.
It reminds us that the journey to finding love begins within one by investing in ourselves, understanding our patterns, breaking free from those chains, and most importantly, believing that we are worthy of a love that is authentic, fulfilling, and truly liberating.
And it's a journey that keeps going even after you found the one. Love is all about evolving and growing and discovering new things together.
Absolutely. So to our listener, we want to leave you with this. What is one small step you can take today to break free from a chain that's holding you back in your relationships? What limiting belief can you challenge? What boundary can you set? What act of self-love can you embrace?
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.